I am no longer worthy to be called your son. We're talking about a series that we're going through, Love Over Lies, and today we're talking about the idea of being unloved. Are we, as we imagine ourselves to be, unloved? Have I been unloved? Have I felt that idea of just not being loved? It's a situation that we find ourselves in. It's a situation that we all feel. It's a situation that comes upon us. And you might not be feeling it right now. You may have felt it in the past. And if you haven't either of those things, I guarantee there'll be a time in the future where you do. The idea that we are unloved is, again, one of those lies that Satan wants to keep on telling us, keeps on wanting to feed into our lives, wants to keep on putting into who we are, because he knows that it separates us from God. He knows that it separates us from God. In 1941 in Auckland, a young girl was born. And a few years later, 26 to be precise, she found herself in Los Angeles. And she was at a function in Los Angeles, and she met a boy. His name was Roberto. Her name was Kim. And not long after they met, there was this chemistry and this connection that they had, and it joined them together. And she started writing him little notes. And she started connecting with him, and she would doodle little pictures on her notes that she would write to him. And pretty soon the relationship formed, and they got married not long after that. Actually, back here in Auckland, they got married back here in Auckland with her family. And she would leave notes for him around the place. She would hide it in a pillowcase, or hide it in a bag, or hide it amongst his lunch, or hide it somewhere for him to find. And the notes went something along this line. Love is. Kim started a whole series of cartoon clips. She would doodle these drawings of her and Roberto. And a whole lot of understanding and a whole lot of just little one-liners to remind us what love is. And pretty soon she was just starting to staple them together and selling them for $1 on the desk at the place where she worked. And it grew and it grew and it became an international hit. It was in the newspapers all around the world, publicized. It brought a huge fortune, huge fame, everything about that, and reminded us and taught us about what love is. How many of us remember this? How many of us have seen these before? I know I have. I've used this in one of my classes a while ago in a midweek. But I remember these as a kid. I remember opening up the newspaper and looking at it to find it, to see what it is. To see what latest piece of wonderful information, what's something else that I could learn, something else that I could glean about what love is. Who taught you what love is? Who taught you what love is? Because invariably our first teachers in teaching us about what love is probably the person who raised us, the people who raised us. They gave us an image, they gave us an understanding of this is what love is. This is what love is supposed to look like. For right or for wrong, for good or for bad, whether they intended it or not, they taught us by their actions, by their lives, this is what love looks like. This is how love is carried out. This is what love is. We have the unintentional events that happen in our lives, the things that go on in our lives. And I sit there and sometimes I sit there and remember my life as a father, as a new father, as a husband. And I look back at some of those things and some of the things that I did and some of the things that I tried to do and the times that I failed miserably, yet still somehow I was conveying what it meant to be a husband, what it meant to be a father. Even in those times where I didn't do well, I was relating that. I relate back that to my dad and sit there and say some of the ways in which he connected with me or tried to connect with me, and we so often missed and didn't connect and failed to actually gel in some way. He connected well with my sisters, but with me, it just didn't work out. Fathers and sons, what are you going to say, eh? We just didn't quite connect in some ways and everything. And while you can sit there and we can say, you know what, I can finally have someone to point the finger at and say, that's why my life is so messed up, because they taught me badly. Just the reality is I interpreted badly too. What my parents were trying to teach me about love, I interpreted it incredibly poorly, because I didn't have a concept, I didn't have an understanding, I didn't have the ability to connect with that. I didn't know what was going on. I resented my father for taking my sister flying one time, allowing my sister to go flying. We went to the airport, she went flying, and I didn't. And I resented my dad for a long time for that. Why did I get to miss out? I was talking with Diana, my sister, a few years ago after my dad had passed away, and she remembered that. She remembered that day. She remembered the day she went flying, and she remembered the day that I stayed on the ground. And she looked at me and says, "You idiot. He wanted you to, but you said no." And I spent my life harbouring that against my father, when in fact I had forgotten that it was my decision, my choice, my fear that said, I don't want to go and do that as a young child. But we misinterpret and we get it wrong. And we end up living this life living with a failed misconception, a failed understanding of what love actually is, of what true love really is. We have these messages that are fed into our lives. We sit there and we can look around at the modern world and modern understanding and say, if you don't look right, you're not going to make the grade. You're not going to pass muster. You're not going to be accepted. And being accepted is part of that idea of being loved. I want to be accepted. It's that idea of being loved by somebody. It's to be accepted. And if I don't look right, then I don't get accepted. If I'm not sporty enough at school, I don't get picked, I'm not accepted, I'm not loved. There are so many ways and so many places and so many times in which we interpret the actions of those around us and our own actions and say, I'm not loved. And we modify ourselves. We change ourselves to say, you know what, I'm so desperate to be accepted, I'm so desperate to be loved, I'm so desperate to want to have that connection with somebody, I will change. I will do something to try and earn that respect, earn that love, earn that connection. And we slowly, ever so imperceptibly, but slowly, ever so slowly, begin to start to understand that love is actually an earned thing. I need to earn somebody else's love. I need to do certain things. If you love me, you will. Fill in the gap. And we live our lives that way. We become to living our lives that way. And it's just not the world around us. It actually happens here in this congregation, in this room, within the church as well. We start putting conditions upon people. We start putting conditions upon who's acceptable and who's not. I just sat there down and brainstormed a little time through my life of everything, just off the top of my head, of things of people who have told me that I am unacceptable before God. I have been told that I have been unacceptable for God for standing up the front and not wearing shoes. And the irony was not lost on me, because it happened in this very room, that the person that came and told me that I was not acceptable to God was the very first person that told me as a child I would never be perfect if I was waiting to be perfect to come to God. You just had to come to Him. It was that very person, the one I distinctly remember that taught me that lesson as a child, came to me and told me I'm unacceptable to God. In fact, I'm insulting God by doing what I'm doing. The impact was quite dramatic that day upon me because of the respect in which I held this person for so long. For them to say this to me, I was in shock because it was two different messages. And the former was the one that I knew best and knew to be true, and this later one I knew to be false, but still got levelled at me. On the items of clothing, not getting dressed up for a Sunday in my Sunday best. I've been told off for wearing jeans. I've been told off for wearing shorts. I've been told off for travelling too much. I've been told off for singing off key. Quite recently, I've been told that my teaching and preaching style is not up to scratch, and basically, and the words that were used is I am too soft. Too soft was the word that got used. I have been told that I'm not active enough in the church. We've been told off, Susan and I have been told off about how we have raised our kids, actually in the church. And again, it was quite a few years ago, but I remember sitting down the back down there and our kids are playing at our feet and everything, and someone came up to us and said, you, and you, get out of here. Quite literally, here. You're not welcome. You're not acceptable. This is not how we do things here. I see you people shaking your heads saying, how can this be? This very year I sat down with a woman who sat here and talked to me and said, I don't approve of the way that this church worships God. And you as leader should be held responsible for that. For how we come before God and worship God, and was accusing of that and saying it's not right. I would have people that have refused to be a part of this because we have watched a rugby game in this hall, in this auditorium. I have been told off for being outspoken, and I have been told off for not speaking out. I'm reminded of my mum who told Suze when we first had kids, from now on, no matter what you do, someone will always tell you you're wrong. Someone will always tell you you're wrong. Someone will always have an opinion. Someone will always say, that's not how it's supposed to be. But you know what? If I sit there and try and appease all of those people, all of those situations, all of that thing, that's not actually love. They're trying to tell me about who I am and my acceptability to God, and people will come and do that to you too. Are you acceptable before God? Does God love you? The prodigal son struggled with that. He went away and he sold everything and he frittered it all away, and he found himself at the bottom, and he comes back and he comes to the realization, he says, I am not worthy to be called your son. I'm not worthy to be called your son anymore. I've made such a mess of my life. I've made so many poor decisions. I have made such a hash of everything. I have lost it all. I have nowhere. I am no one, and I am not worthy anymore. See, even in Jesus' day, they struggled with these problems, struggled the problems of understanding who we are and who ourselves is before God and before those that we surround ourselves with. We come to that point in our lives, we ask the question, how could they love me? How could someone possibly accept me? And you come to that conclusion, I'm no longer worthy. You know, I remember at one point in my life, I am down and I am really struggling, and it's been a long time of a lot of struggle and a lot of hard things, and I am sitting there trying my hardest, trying my best to be the best husband, to be the best father, to be the best provider, to be the best person in my job, to do all of those things, and I am completely beside myself, just trying to figure all of that out. And Suze comes to me, and she is an amazing woman. And, she's trying to get close to me. She's trying to think, but I am so struggling with everything in life. I just have to keep everything at arm's length, at distance, and say, it's just too much. It's too much. And she's trying to say, let me in, let me in. And I remember her words, I keep on telling you that I love you, but I just don't know why you won't accept that. She loves me, but I just don't accept it. I can't allow that in because there's so much going on. And I won't allow that love to get in. We find ourselves in those situations, and those situations are going to lead to one of three possibilities. Well, actually four, but one of three for right now. Either we keep at arm's length and really don't let people see the real me, who I am, and just keep you all at distance. Surfacey, out there, day to day, let's get by. Or I really, really just start working harder for you guys to like me more. We can sit there and we can work really hard to be the person that other person wants you to be. And then we can, with the hope, with the goal that maybe some point in time they'll like me. Or the third possibility is I can just walk away and say it's impossible. Those are the three possibilities that we're dealing with when we're dealing with how to respond to the imposter of love. The imposter of love, is love that is not real love. Is love that is not that which is of God. Turn with me to 1 John 4. I want to go through this section in 1 John 4 and highlight some things that's going to tell us some stuff about what real love really is. 1 John 4, verses 7 through 11. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. I want to start off by saying, recognizing the parts highlighted in yellow there, what's the source of love? Where does love actually come from? God. God is the source of love. Any other source, anything else that you're going to get is at best a poor photocopy, and at worst is a complete imposter that's just lying to you. We will try, and we'll get there, and we'll talk to this a bit later. We are trying to pour out and emulate the love that God has for us. That's where we're aiming in all of this and everything. But at the end of the day, even that is going to fall short. Why? Because I'm human. Why? Because I will fail. But if I want to know what real love is, if I want to understand what real love is, it can't be a love is cartoon in a newspaper. That's not what the source of understanding of where love actually is. We can't sit there and go for some self-help book and say, what is love? That's not going to give us the true answer. The true answer of love comes from God, because He is the source of love. Love comes from God. God is love, John will tell us. The problem with the prodigal is he disconnected himself from the source. He lived with the Father, he was there with the Father, he connected with the Father, he was connected with the source of love, but at a point in time in his life, he decided, I am going to disconnect myself with that source. And he walked away. He walked away, and the only other sources that were fed into his life about what love was supposed to be was the world in which he surrounded himself, all the people that would say, hey, we love you as long as you got money, you can spend on us, you can give us a good time, wild living, great parties. But when that's all gone, we don't love you anymore. Go feed pigs. He disconnected himself from the Father. Some disconnections don't require distance, though. Because we know the story and we've read the story, and if you don't know the story completely, I'll happily share it with you after the rest of the story. But we also know that that man had two sons. The oldest son didn't remove himself from the Father by distance, but somehow he was still very distant from the Father and from his understanding of what love was. Proximity, just sitting here in a pew, does not mean to say that you're going to get what love is. You need that connection with the Father. You need that connection with the Father, because He is the true source of understanding of what love is. Max Lucado brought out a book a long time ago now, book called Punchinello, about a little wooden puppet, and he was connecting in his community and everything, and they used to put stickers on you whether you were good or bad, a bit like Facebook these days, or things, you give your thumbs up or your thumbs down, and whether they like you or not, and basically it was about how you felt about those. But he connected with his Maker, and through connecting with the Maker, he understood what genuine love was, and understood that those stickers that about whether people liked you or not didn't matter so much as the love that the Father had. It's a good book. If you haven't read it, go find yourself a copy. His brother didn't understand it. He walked away. His brother didn't know it, didn't learn it either. It's a process in which we learn. This is how God showed His love among us. He sent His one and only Son into the world that we might live through Him. Here's the thing. God takes the initiative. God will always take the initiative. Love will take the initiative. He says, I see you, I recognize the hardship you're in, I recognize the struggle that you have, and I will take the initiative. I'm not waiting for you to sit there and say, where are you? You want to come back? I'm taking the initiative, and love says, I will walk into your situation. This is how God showed His love among us. He sent His one and only Son into the world that we might live, not just exist. Love doesn't sit there just saying, getting by. Love isn't about just the idea of, you know what, mere existence is okay, connection is okay, rubbing shoulders is okay, the occasional dinner is okay. This is about living. Love is about actually living, coming to life. God takes the initiative so we can have life. That's what love does. It reignites life within us. God is that source, and that's what He wants to do within us, with each and every one of us. This is love. Not that we loved God. Again, who's taking the initiative? God's taking the initiative. But that He loved us and sent His Son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. What does that mean exactly? Again, God says, I take the initiative, and I am going to pay a price for that. Okay, love is not something that is given away easily. God's love is just not, oh yeah, well, here's this a little bit extra, I'll throw that away, I'll give that to you, that's fine. God's love is costly. The love that He has for you costs Him everything. And for the idea of us actually having to earn it, it's not earned, it's paid for. He says, the shortcoming that comes, I pay for it. That's the idea of an atoning sacrifice. That atoning says, I pay the price. It might be our debt, it might be your debt, it might be my debt, but He pays the price. He says, that's what my love does. I pay the price. Love is about the idea of God sitting there saying, it's not, this is something that is unconditional. Love is not a choice to God, it's who He is. It's not a choice about Him, about whether He loves you or not. He loves you. He loves you. Just like Suze was telling me, I love you. You just have to let me in and hear that. He loves us, each one of us. We just have to let Him in to be able to hear that. We have to let Him in to be able to understand that. He loves you where you are. Because if He didn't, why in the world is love patient? If I have to earn, if I have to sit there and become better, if I have to become the person that I need to be, if I have to be perfect before coming before God, then why does love need to be patient? Patient implies the fact that I am not the finished product. And God's love is patient. We're not the finished product, but He is willing to hang in there and to be patient with us. If I am the finished product, if I sit there and work myself and become the perfect thing before coming before God, why does love need to be kind? Kindness implies some hurt, implies some sort of need, some shortcoming. I'm full of needs, I'm full of shortcoming, I'm hurt. And God says that's okay because my love is kind. My love is kind. If I'm all right before God, before coming to Him and before connecting to Him, love doesn't envy, it doesn't boast, it's not proud. It's about comparing myself to others. It's about looking at everybody else around. Love's not the one who's sitting there saying, but what about them? Look what they've got so much better than me. Look how much better I've got it than them. See, you should love me more because look at me and look who I am. Love me more, God. Love me more, God, because you know, and everybody else out there knows that I'm better. And that pride, that's not love. Imagine a God who says, you know what, I can't be bothered being patient. Why should I be kind? A God who sits there and says, I'm going to be boastful. I'm not sure what God would have to envy about, but there we go. A God who's proud. That's not our God. That's not who He is. That's not the nature of who He is. That's not how He deals with us. It's not how He deals with us. Love does not dishonor others, and it's not self-seeking. My arrogance, I fail to recognize others around me. I fail to recognize the good around me. I am self-absorbed, but God is not. He does. In the very essence of the fact that He takes the initiative, He is not self-absorbed. He is looking out for others, and He wants to honor each one of us and provide honor. Even though we feel dishonorable, even though we feel like we are not worthy of it, He says, I want to give you honor. I want to seek what is best for you. That's what our God does. That's what His love does. God's love, God is not easily angered. I'm easily angered. Roll me up the wrong way, keep on saying, put me under some stress, and I will get angry. And for all of the reasons we could mention above, I would not be surprised if God was angry at me, but He's not. He's not angry. Sometimes we think that God is angry. Sometimes we feel like God should be angry. But love is not easily angered. Not easily angered. I've probably got a filing cabinet full of wrongs that I have done, and probably 2 filing cabinets of wrongs that other people have done to me. But God doesn't have one, because love keeps no record of wrongs. Doesn't keep a record of wrongs. Can you imagine that? Just being able to let go. Imagine if I'd been able to let go of the wrong that was done by my father about flying in an aeroplane. If I'd let go of that years and years and years ago, maybe I wouldn't have had the struggle that I've had with him. Now, I know that's just one example of things, but if I'd be able to let that go, then maybe I could have let other things go. Maybe I could have let more things go if I understood that love does not keep a record of wrongs. It doesn't delight in evil, but rejoices in truth. It says, I'm going to choose to focus on what unites us. I'm going to choose to focus on the positive. I'm going to catch the good that gets done. I am going to rejoice in the good things. That's what love does. It doesn't sit there and highlight, go, yeah, look what you did wrong, because that just comes back to that boasting and proudness and envy, pulling other people down, about being just self-seeking and selfish, about pulling other people down. It's not. It's about recognizing the good that's in us, because we struggle so much to do so much that's good. Why in the world? And I'm so aware of the times when I fail. I don't need to be highlighted my failures. I'm perfectly aware of my own failures. I ended up being depressed, I ended up getting fat, and you know how great, hey, look, you put on weight. Really, I hadn't noticed. What good does that do? Of what value is that? It's of no value. How about we highlight the good? How about we highlight the positives? Because that's what God does. That's the highlights. That's what love does. It rejoices in the truth. It finds the good and celebrates that. It always protects. Love is out there looking to say, how can I look out for somebody else? How can I look out for the other person? How can I look out for you? I'm here to protect. It always trusts. Here's a hard one. Do we always trust? It's hard to earn trust. Here's one of those things where you sit there and say, surely, of all of the things in love, this is something that has to be earned. Trust has to be earned. But God says love always trusts. I'm going to put my trust in you. You know what that does for people, to sit there and say, somebody put their trust in me? Somebody put their trust in me says that somebody saw value in me. And we want to live up to value. We want to be valued. Put your trust. We put our trust in somebody. Love always hopes, which is fantastic because I always doubt. But there's hope always, because that's what love offers, is a future. It always perseveres because I have wanted to give up more times than I can count. But love continues on. And love never fails, even when I feel like a failure. That's the love of God. That's the love that He wants to teach each one of us. That's the love that He wants to connect us with. That's the love that He so desperately wants to feed into our lives. That's the love that He so desperately wants to reach out to us with. The question is, what are we going to do with a God that sits there and reaches out to us with such love? Because it's like it's alien, it's foreign, it's not what we're used to, it's too much. And it can be. But God says, that's okay. I'm patient. And while you get it, and while you're still learning about dealing with my love and who I am and those things, I'll be kind. I'm not going to worry about the things that you mess up on along the way. But let's just work together on this. Let me in a little bit. Let me teach you a little bit. Let me help you understand a little bit. Let me help you grasp this a little bit. And we'll get there together because I'll persevere with you. Because there's hope for the future. Because the things can always get better. And I trust that we will get there. And I've got you covered. I'm there with you all the way. I'm with you all the way. And while we get that, and while we learn that, and while we're learning from God what true love really is, dear friends, since God has loved us, we ought to love one another. In that way in which God is teaching you about His love. Not the world teaching you about His love, not Lay's self-help book, not as a lover's cartoon, but God is teaching you about love. Love one another that way. Love one another that way. Love one another that way. Our life is a life that was paid for. Our errors were paid for. The desire for God to sit there and say, I want to have a relationship with you again, is so, so strong. Let me in. Let me love you. Let me teach you what love is. Let us love one another. Father, we have fallen short, quite frankly, of the love in which you offer and the love in which you are. And some of us have been with you a long time. Some of us are just starting our journey with you. But wherever we are on our road and our journey, continue to teach us about your love and who you are, about the unconditional nature of who you are and reaching out to us. And recognizing, Father, all of the hiding and all of the standing off that we do is only hurting ourselves. You have something much greater for us. Help us to let you in. Help us to connect with you. Help us to be open to allow you to connect with us. That your love may enter us, and that we may grow and become the people that you have called us to be, the people that you've created us to be, the wonderful hope that we have for the future. Thank you through the name of your atoning sacrifice, that of Jesus, who came and said, I'll pay the price. I'll pay the price of love. Thank you through him, we pray. Amen.